Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here, holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% or more on your first Wrangler.com order when you use promo code GOJO15. Awesome show for you guys today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live. DraftKings YouTube channel, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, and more from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern every Monday through Friday. We have a fun one coming up today here, guest-wise, as we get ready for college football this weekend, because we are going to be off of doing live shows, new shows for the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday. You will not be seeing new shows from us. You will be seeing best of shows, fun stuff that we've done before in the lead up to the weekend. So we got to jam all of our previewing into one day here. And thankfully, for some help on that front, especially with the game coming up this weekend, we got a couple of guys that have lived that pretty personally there in Joshua Perry and in Jake Butt, who host a great show, Red Corner, Blue Corner on Stadium, going inside the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. And, Dad, that's one you grew up more around. You grew up in the state of Ohio. You grew up with Ohio State being a team that recruited you and all of your brothers. And so I'd imagine have a little more familiarity regionally with this than I did, just looking at it as an observer from the outside who every year recently has seen this game as one that's not only a huge rivalry, but every year has had national title implications.
And I know Mike told you the names, but just so we go deeper and you understand, Butt went to Michigan, Perry went to Ohio State. They do a podcast together.
Yes.
So we're really going to dive into this one. Yeah, listen, when you were that was the other side of it is our family was kind of received poorly after both me and my brother Bob, we were both heavily recruited around the country, did not go to Ohio State. When you don't go to Ohio State as a high recruit, it's really frowned upon. And I
from
never really
Cleveland.
had it. Yeah, being from Cleveland. And I never really had an intention to go in there. Neither did my brother Bob. He started it off, obviously, in 75, going to Notre Dame. But, I mean, yeah, you grew up around that rivalry all the time. Michigan, it was Michigan, Ohio State, it was Alabama, Auburn, it was USC, UCLA. Those were the ones when I was growing up that were the major big time rivalries. So, and it's huge in the state of Ohio, with Ohio saying the team up north. And many years of it, many guys that I played against, not in college, who went to Ohio State because we didn't play Ohio State, but in the NFL, who were from Ohio State, who I played going all the way back to a high school all-star football game. So it's pretty wild this week, especially when you get into households that have some Michigan, some Ohio State, where you get to talk about it in such a hated rivalry. The thing that's amazing to me is we've had players that have transferred from one to the other. So, I mean, talk about getting both sides of it. When you're involved on one side and then in this era of moving around, you end up on the other side of it. I think that's pretty wild. So, as we've always said, the rivalry, while the players are in it, and I get it, it is really more kind of for the fans, I think.
I think, I don't know, some of them are different. Like, both of these are teams that have the countdown clock year round that really build their program around beating this team. They talk about it all offseason. Everyone on both sides admits you're always kind of looking ahead to this team. And Dad, I think the other factor in this is there's enough proximity. Like Michigan and Ohio aren't next to each other, but you're close enough to party. I think regional proximity always makes these rivalries better. It's why I always said I had way more red ass for Michigan than I ever did for USC because we were close by them. We shared a border with Michigan as a state, and we saw Michigan drivers on the road all the time, and we saw their fans all around. So you do get a little bit extra, and just the makeup of that team. They talked a lot of crap, and I didn't think they deserved to based on how good they were when I was there. So
you do. I get it. It's more rivalry by players in college than in the NFL. That's for sure. But I think it's less than it was, and it's always been more on the fans and alumni and their time to kind of shoot their shot with that. But you're right. Proximity helps. Duke, North Carolina, from the basketball side, obviously Alabama, Auburn, Notre Dame, Michigan. But as I said, I've always been the Notre Dame USC guy, not Michigan, because if I didn't go to Notre Dame, I would have gone to Michigan. So I don't have that feeling for Michigan that you do and your era of guys have. I do just have the distinction of we had the first night lights game at Notre Dame in 1982 was against Michigan when they brought in the temporary lights, Musco lights. And that was the first night game at Notre Dame. So that's a distinction I have with Michigan being at Notre Dame. It's a great week. It's a great prep week. There's no need to, or there shouldn't be a need to motivate anybody, especially in the Ohio State-Michigan game. I mean, it's more than just the rivalry game this year. Its winner basically is going to take all because they should then win the Big Ten championship and will be a lock for the playoffs. There's the Ryan Day situation that Jim Harbaugh was in a few years ago where Harbaugh couldn't beat Day in Ohio State. Now Day can't beat Harbaugh in Michigan. How long does that go, even though Ohio State's sitting there ranked where they are? How long do alumni deal with that, where you're not beating Michigan, you're not playing for the Big Ten championship, you're not in the playoffs? That's just the level these two teams are, so that's always added to it. But this is
Jim Harbaugh's not even going to be there this year, which is going to make that even more pronounced.
Yes.
Is, oh, by the way, if you don't go pull this off, and Jim Harbaugh's not even there because he's serving the last game in his 3-game suspension from the Big Ten, throw that over the top of the pile. So you're absolutely right. Lot to get to. We'll get to it with Josh and Jake when they come on the show in a little bit, diving further into this one. Because, Dad, we've also got the Thanksgiving of it all to contend with here. And it's twofold, right? Like, I have this conversation all the time because I'm a real pro-Christmas and holiday season guy. I like putting the decorations up early. I know you guys got trees up already. We've all talked about this. Everyone on this show is pro getting started with the holiday season early. But that doesn't mean that Thanksgiving is any less special as a day, because it is one that comes free of stress. There is maybe the stress of having to have your relatives over, have to cook, but you remove all of the pressure of gift giving, all of the other ancillary portions of the holiday that really ramp up the stress around Christmas time and the holiday season. So I think Thanksgiving, special day, and for our intents and purposes, it's covered in sports, right? You go wall to wall, Thursday into Friday. We've always had great college football on Friday during Thanksgiving season. Now we're adding some NFL in over the top. So all of that, I think, makes this stretch coming up an all-timer in both the sports calendar and the holiday calendar.
Especially a few years ago, they added that third game to the Thanksgiving, right? It used to be just 2. Now it's 3 games.
Yeah.
And then you go into Friday with NFL as well. So, it's a literal feast of food and a feast of football as well. It's a big day and it's a work day, and kudos to all those who are hosting hosting Thanksgiving dinners, because prep has been going on all week. It's a huge food prep today. As far as getting everything prepared, you certainly can't wait till the last minute. And just it's such a production when you're the one that's going to have, or it's your turn to have the family over, and you have to, everything that goes with it, from a clean house to getting everybody involved to helping. So big day today. And all I have to say is, if you're going over somebody's house and they're hosting you, when the meal's done and all that, help a little bit, okay? Help a little bit. Pick up a plate, take it into the kitchen, see where you can help a little bit before you unbuckle your pants and plop down on the couch, which you absolutely should do. Hopefully you know that person enough to do it. but help around the house a little bit because that family or that person, mainly I'm sure the mom or the wife, has done all the work. So give them a hand before you plop down and take your food coma nap.
I'm going to tell you the real advice is and this is the exact same advice that I would give to offensive linemen when there's an interception, is you're not there to actually make the play. You just need to show up in the frame giving great effort. Like when someone makes an interception on the football field, watch the offensive lineman. They're trying to make sure that they're near it because when you cut on film the next day, your coach, the offensive coordinator, the head coach, just want to see were you trying to get over there because you're a little bit too big to be expected to make the play 9 out of 10 times. That's the same way in Thanksgiving. I just need you in the frame. Go pick up a plate and bring it over by the kitchen, and then I'm sure the host will say, oh, don't worry about that. Just put that down over there. We'll get that to a little bit. Oh, are you sure? Like it's kind of like reaching for your wallet at dinner where you just got to make it known you were thinking about it and you were willing to do it, even though you're not actually going to help more often than not because you don't know where they put the things well enough. You don't know how they organize stuff. You don't know how the person who cooked dinner wants everything cleaned after the fact. So 9 out of 10 times, I think personally, and Jesse, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't know what your opinions are on this, but just getting in the frame for me, I think is usually the right way to go.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as you are because I don't do any of the cooking, so I just sort of show up and praise the food. That's a good one. A lot of compliments, but yeah, I try to just show up when the food's ready and then leave before I have to clean anything.
Oh, wow, Jesse. Nice.
Hell yeah.
Look at you. Just the antithesis of what we just talked about of helping a little bit.
But I have provided the ultimate help, which is a grandchild.
Oh, see, you're hanging your hat on that, huh? Oh, my gosh.
Boom.
Wow.
Yep. Welcome to the Thunderdome.
Giving birth. Giving birth like it's hard.
In the midst of all of this. Wow.
Yep.
Gonna bail you out from that one.
Okay.
No, it wasn't a joke. My dad's serious. He's slandering motherhood. He doesn't respect or appreciate the institution of motherhood. He's a monster, and you should all respond accordingly at Golic on Twitter. Let's look ahead at some of the football that's coming up on Thanksgiving. We do have 3 games, as you mentioned, Dad, and none of them are expected to be all that close if you're looking at the spread right now. Everyone at least a touchdown favorite in the 3 games that'll take place on Thanksgiving Day. We've got Packers at Lions, Commanders at Cowboys, and then Niners at Seahawks, which is the wild one. The 49ers have only played on Thanksgiving 2 times over the last 50 years, so not the usual brand of bird or that we're going to get to see in this one with them and the Seahawks. But, Dad, Packers-Lions, the one that feels a little bit more traditional to start things off. The Lions, 7.5-point favorites against the Packers team that just got their biggest win of the season. You surprised by that at all?
No, I'm not. It's at home. The way the Packers offense can score. Green Bay is such, still an inconsistent team. So, no, I'm not. First time, they've been favored since 2016. Normally, you would watch this game and it would be the Lions who were going to get run over by somebody, and now they're one of the top teams in the NFC and deservedly so. So these are one of these games, you can't let go, right? You have a healthy lead against Minnesota, but you still have to play Minnesota 2 times. So you just you'd like to really create some more distance, even though I don't think Minnesota is going to catch them. Don't give them a reason or hope to think they can catch you. Win the games you should right now. And Green Bay is a game they should win. What do we have? 3 quarterbacks under 60% completion, and Jordan Love is one of them. So he looks good at times, and he doesn't look good at times. He's not a rookie, but he's a first-year starter. So he's going through some of that as this team is trying to rebuild yet after another Hall of Fame quarterback leaves them. So this should be a game. Detroit almost let one go last week with Chicago and made a nice comeback, which was very, very impressive for them, but they shouldn't have been in that position, and they shouldn't be in that position here. That's kind of when you're hitting the next stratosphere, is you really take care of these games. And this is one they should. I know it's a division game, and I know it's Thanksgiving and all that, or Detroit's used to playing on this day, but they should be able to take care of business in this one.
They should. The thing I'm interested in this game, because I agree, I think the Lions win this game, and I think, honestly, they probably cover in this game. The thing I am interested in is these young Green Bay receivers that, especially in this last game, had a really good time. Jaden Reed both running the ball, catching those little jet handoffs and reverses. Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson, when he was healthy enough to be out there, was a group of pass catchers that started to look like they had some of the versatility, especially in Matt LaFleur's offense, to make things a little bit interesting. But I think for the Lions, this is your opportunity to go, hey, big stage, grown-up team, different expectations this year. You've won some of the close games you've traditionally lost. Now you really get to put your foot down on the gas. Aaron Jones, it sounds like, is going to be unlikely to play with that sprained MCL, according to Adam Schefter, which is a big blow for the Packers in that backfield, obviously. So we'll monitor that as well. Dad, of the last two games, Cowboys at Commanders seems like that's going to be a bloodbath. I am very afraid for Sam Howell in this game, who anytime, just as a general rule of thumb, if you're a quarterback in the business of being sacked and you start to get mentioned around the name David Carr, you need to start to check in with your healthcare provider because things really aren't going well for you. And that's where Sam Howell finds himself now. Through 11 games, he is sandwiched between Derek Carr in terms of the most sacked quarterbacks through 11 games. David Carr leads with 58. He is third with 50. And right in the middle is Sam Howell at 51. If you are in the business of getting sacked 4 times against a Giants team that only has 19 sacks on the year last week, I shudder to think about what this is going to look like against Micah Parsons once he gets the dosage of NO explode right.
This is really a lot on Eric Bieniemy, right? The offensive coordinator say, how do I manage this? What kind of protection am I going to have here? Who has to stay in, back a tight end to chip and or block through the entire play or go out late? That's going to be interesting to watch. How they go about that, because this should be the Cowboys are rolling right now. We knew defensively how good they were, but Dak and that offense has really been going. So this, just as I talked about with Detroit in the division game with Green Bay, they're better than Green Bay and should take care of business. And Dallas is better than Washington, and Dallas is going to want to try and catch Philly as they're 2 games back with a loss under their belt to Philly. They play them again in a few weeks. So this is another one of those games, just what I said about Detroit. You can't give this one up. I know a division game can be different sometimes, but you just can't. This should be a win for you. You should be able to. And remember, when you're sacked that many times, how many more times are you hit? That's the amazing thing. So Howell's been knocked around so much. So I expect both Detroit to cover. I expect Dallas to cover as well. The best game, hopefully, should be the last game.
I hope so. Like, if you were to have to pick one team to go and at least cover, like going against the spread, or even an outright upset, it would probably have to be Seahawks at Niners, right? Or Niners at Seahawks, excuse me.
Yes, it would. And you sit there and look at the situation right now, and this is also the closest one, with San Francisco at 7-3 and Seattle at 6-4. This is the next couple of games. These two teams play each other. San Francisco, they play the Seahawks. Then they're at Philly, and then they play the Seahawks again. That's what San Fran has in the next 3 games. So they're only 1 up on Seattle. They play them 2 times in the next 3 weeks, and sandwiched in between is the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's a heck of a stretch for San Francisco, and an opportunity for Seattle starting tonight to try and say, okay, let's be right in it, right in the thick of this division race.
Yeah, and a tough time for Seattle to be limping into this one here. Kenneth Walker III left pretty early in the last game with an oblique strain. You had Geno Smith going out some points of last game with an elbow contusion. It sounds like he's going to be good to go, but between that, having a backup right tackle, it sounds like still in because Abraham Lucas hasn't been there. Like, Dad, you do worry, and I do, against a 49ers pass rush that's gotten a little bit of added juice with Chase Young coming off the deadline, and the offense that now has all of its part back. And when we've seen the 49ers offense is whole, they can move the ball, they can do good things, and they seem to be the team that we all believe that they can be when you take away 1 or 2 of those parts. In the case of Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel from a couple weeks ago, then the thing can start to fall apart a little bit, but they're whole right now, so I see no reason why they should lose.
I don't either. I guess it's more hope than anything that this is a good game. It's a 7-point spread, and I would give the points in all of these games, but this one you hope would be the most competitive one. But San Francisco, we've seen them not roll and losing 3 in a row, but you just said some of the reasons why. They're whole right now, and they are looking like the San Francisco team that we saw earlier in the season where it was San Fran or Philly or San Fran as who the best team in the conference was. So all the favored teams should hold, but it's football. So, it's football, it's Thanksgiving, so it's a short week, so you never know. Injuries don't heal up as quick because you lose those couple of days, a little nicks where you're still playing, but you're still nicked a little bit. So anything can happen out there.
So I want to get to them because you're right. It looks bad on paper. And coming up next, we will get to just how historically lopsided it looks on paper and someone who knows a little something personal about being in a game with a lopsided spread on Thanksgiving. And I think the most important thing that any of us have to look forward to coming up for this Thanksgiving slate of NFL games. We'll do that next here, and a little bit of college football playoff ranking reaction from last night here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We got some big spreads on this Thanksgiving slate, all hovering around 7 points. So the last Thanksgiving slate where we had every game close like this was back in 2001, but the largest upset on Thanksgiving in the last 30 years belongs to Golic Sr.'s Dolphins. That is right. The 1993 Dolphins over the Cowboys. Miami was a 10-point favorite. Won the game 16-14. Man, Golic Sr., what do you remember about this one? That's pretty impressive.
Snow. I remember all the snow. It snowed. There was snow all over the field. And I always liked that, as I've always said, snow or rain brings everybody's athletic ability down to mine, because all of a sudden the fast guys aren't as fast, the quick guys aren't as quick, and the strong guys sometimes can't get a hold of you as much. So I was a big fan of playing in snow. Let me just say that. This game, we were, I think, 10-point dogs in this game. This was the year that we had the best record in football. And this ended up being our last win of the season. After this game, we had the best record in football, and we lost the remaining games and didn't even make the playoffs. We lost in overtime to the Patriots in New England, didn't make the playoffs, and as it turned out, that was my last game of my NFL career. I didn't know that yet because the league hadn't retired me then. They did shortly after. But in that game, we're down 14-13, but the offense drives down, and we have basically a chippy, basically a old-time extra point distanced field goal for the win. There's about 21 seconds left, and I've always played the right end on field goal teams. Did it through each of the teams I played with in the NFL. So I was always that eligible receiver. I got to have fun in practice, like running a route like I was going to make a catch and such. But I'm out there, and sure enough, and Mike, you know this sound, you've been on field goal teams, is we're going to kick the field goal, and you hear the double thud. The kicker kicking the ball and then the ball being blocked. So you know it's blocked, so you start to look around to see where the ball is. And the ball ends up going in front of the line of scrimmage. It's kind of off to the right and spinning around like on the 2-yard line. So it's past the line of scrimmage, so nobody, we can't pick it up or do anything with it like that to advance the ball. So we're basically all running and standing by the ball, actually long enough to think about trying to push a Cowboy into the ball so it will become a live ball. That's how much time we had standing there as the ball was spinning around. And man, I mean, I love the guy. I've got to know him after. And Leon Lett, God love his soul. I mean, he just came sliding in,
right.
thinking that he had to recover the ball, thinking it was a live football. And he came sliding in feet first. And instead of recovering it, he kicked it. So as soon as he kicked it, it became a live ball, and it kicked into the end zone, and we recovered it. Now, they said we get the recovery like where it was outside the end zone, right where he kicked the ball. But we were stunned. It was this blur out of nowhere, him sliding in, kicking it, and making it a live ball. Our ball, 2-yard line, another chance, kick the field goal, we kick it, we win it 16-14, and that's the ball game. So just a tough ending for Leon Lett and the Cowboys, and just a miracle ending for us.
Yeah, I mean, a game that gets showed every year. It's got to have ruined the holiday for poor Leon Lett. He can't. I mean, everyone looks forward to Thanksgiving, and this guy has to dread it because people are going to bring up one of his worst memories and play it over TV every single year. So spend some time your Thanksgiving praying for Leon Lett that he gets a little bit of peace. And big guys, make sure you're always paying attention in special teams meeting because you never know when your number is going to get called on that one. Dad, Thanksgiving and the NFL often all go together. There is one other time-honored tradition everyone has to look forward to, and that's the musical acts at halftime. And this year's halftime shows for Thanksgiving are no exception. The Packers get to enjoy, and the Lions, the musical stylings of Jack Harlow. The Commanders and Cowboys get Dolly Parton. And the 49ers and Seahawks get Steve Aoki, which feels the most spiritually aligned of any of those there. All just chasing the high of the 0-1 Cowboys who got to watch Creed perform at halftime in the only one of these halftime show performances that will actually stand the test of time.
Wasn't Dolly Parton, didn't she just perform at the Tennessee game? Wasn't Peyton Manning there as well? So is she making the tour now, the college and pro tour? Is that what's happening? Is it her residency setting up at different football stadiums? Is that how it's going?
We should be so lucky.
Yeah, I would say, God willing, that is what we all get. So that seems like the biggest win of the weekends. Thankfully, those Commanders and Cowboys fans will have something good to watch because I have a feeling the game won't be involved there.
Question
let's get to college football.
Wait, I have a question. 49ers Seahawks, Steve Aoki. He's a DJ, right?
Yeah.
So he's just going to be DJing? He's just going to be spinning up there? That's the whole thing?
Well, Steve's the only thing I'm waiting for with Steve Aoki is his big thing is he throws sheet cake at
the
people.
Cake, yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've seen this. Yeah, Dad, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but Steve Aoki's whole bit is during his sets, he throws the sheet cake at people. It does feel like, and I get it's in the middle of the football game. I get the teams usually aren't out there. Pete Carroll needs to throw this sheet cake. Like, we need to hope that the game is in such a place or Pete Carroll just doesn't care enough at this point where he could come out. And maybe after the game, maybe if the Seahawks somehow pull off this upset and they're at home, you bring Steve Aoki down in the post game and then you get like shirtless Pete Carroll throwing a cake. That's the visual I want to see.
That would be amazing.
I would just rather have somebody give me, just give me a piece of cake. So that's what instead of throwing it and make me. Now, I will pick it up off the ground, but wait, where is he performing? It's a grass stadium, right? Is it in San Fran?
He's in Seattle, yeah. So he's at Lumen Field.
So how awful is me? Because if you throw it on the synthetic field, you're going to get all the rubbery, little things on it, right? That's on a synthetic field.
Yeah. But if you throw it on a grass field, you're going to get dirt on it. So that's not
okay.
Either one of them's not great.
I can move the dirt. I'm going to pick up the cake and eat it no matter where it is. I'm a big believer in the 5-minute rule or 5-second rule if that's the way you want to go. I don't know. And I just been told by what's that? Oh yeah, I pick up food off the ground. Jesse, do you know what Mike did one time?
He wouldn't actually pick up the piece of cake after 5 minutes. There's no way he would actually do that, I firmly believe, especially for a piece of cake, because it absorbs. The cake absorbs all the stuff on the ground here. It's not like some sort of hard candy where you can just blow on it a little bit, maybe give it a quick rinse or something like that, and then understand, all right, it's particle-free, we're good to go, and then you can consume from there. The cake, it absorbs all that stuff. You've got no chance there.
Maybe a minute. I'd go a minute. You can just wipe the stuff off. I mean, seriously, it doesn't bug me unless you're throwing it in mud or something like that where there's something really bad on it. I'm going to give it a go. But yeah, I never understood the whole throwing the sheet cake thing. In all honesty, and I'll even go further and say the whole DJ thing at a halftime. But every stadium now, college and pro, has a DJ that's playing stuff before games. So that is certainly the big thing now at all the stadiums. That's been that way for a little while now.
And Steve Aoki, an incredible performer, friend of the program, and he has thrown a sheet cake at one of our guys who works here, Steve Buchanan, has gotten drilled in the face with a Steve Aoki sheet cake. So.
Oh, wow. What an honor.
Yes. He has been honored. And he said it had not been brought to room temperature yet, so it was a little hard, as you can see here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a close range throw. Okay. So
wait, hold on. I mean, that's a point blank throw, and there's no frosting on his face, so that had to be kind of
it was
almost
firm.
Out of the fridge.
Yeah, they did not bring it to room temp. He said that.
What is that?
Yeah,
that's abuse.
It was
what that is.
I was gonna say that's an HR violation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think that could have given him a bloody nose. I mean, that was intense.
I'm not in it for that. Someone's throwing that at me like that, I'm punching them in the throat. I mean, that's just not happening. No. I mean, Steve's got to go up there and test it beforehand, get a little view of what he's doing. Because if you go and see it's that firm, that's a brick. That's basically that ain't
a sugar
cool.
brick that just got thrown at his face.
Yeah, it was, and he said it hurt.
Damn, Justice.
Wow, that is not cool at all. Wow.
Yeah.
To bring Steve Aoki back and let Steve Buchanan get his revenge.
Yes.
On that.
That's what needs to happen.
Exactly right. To take one in the face. In the face.
Send him to Seattle on some vigilante stuff to go and get Steve Aoki when he's released. The time-honored tradition of Thanksgiving concerts. Someone in the crowd, make sure that they warm the cakes up for you. Coming up next, we'll warm the playoff plates up for you as we look at the CFP and our Thanksgiving spreads here as we head into the holiday.
GoJo and Golic. The latest college football playoff rankings are out, as you can see right here. So, guys, here's what I want to talk about. Washington moved into the top 4 for the first time this season. Florida State fell to number 5 after losing quarterback Jordan Travis for the season. That was kind of expected, though, right?
Yeah, I would say people that were reacting thinking the committee was punishing Florida State for that were missing the point. We saw this coming last week and said as much on the show that if Washington got a win on the road in Corvallis against a ranked Oregon State team this last week, while Florida State was playing North Alabama that they ended up pulling away from even with Jordan Travis out, they were going to get jumped. So yeah, Jesse, you're absolutely right. This was not surprising at all, at least to me, Dad, and I think to most people looking at this practically.
Everybody needs to understand if Florida State, even though they're going to be with their backup, Tate Rodemaker now, the backup quarterback, if they beat Florida and they beat Louisville, they will be in the playoffs. There is no way that committee could keep them out as an undefeated team, winning 2 games with your backup quarterback still going on and winning those games and remaining undefeated. So while we discuss these things every week, and I get it, I understand why we have to do that because positioning can be key. More in my eyes, positioning on just the outside looking in. And now Florida State is on the outside, but we know Ohio State or Michigan are going to get a loss. Florida State is not going to be behind them. Florida State is not going to be behind if Alabama beats Georgia and they both have 1 loss, whatever the committee wants to do with them. If Florida State is undefeated, they will be in the playoffs. Mike, do you disagree any at all with that?
No, I think it's pretty easy. And I mean, we've got a historical precedent on this, right? Year 1, Ohio State did this. Cardale Jones was the 3rd string quarterback to start the season, and he ends up winning a national championship for that team, taking over at the end of the year, almost at this exact same juncture. So, no, I think Florida State absolutely is one of the teams that still controls their own destiny. I think there's about 6 teams right now that control their own destiny, going all the way down through, I would say 7, because you could go all the way down through I guess you got to remove Texas from that. But Texas and Alabama probably on the outside end of totally controlling their own destiny. But, Dad, I can say 2 things for certain. If Florida State wins out, they're going to be in. And as we get into the conversation about the best 1-loss teams, the teams potentially in there, and the situation that everybody's worried about with Texas and Alabama, because you've got the head-to-head win there. Texas went on the road and beat Alabama. Alabama's looked great since. They play in the SEC. Mike, what if Alabama beats Georgia, number 1 ranked Georgia in the SEC championship, and you've got enough circumstances that now have us having to choose between Texas, a 1-loss potential conference champion Texas, and a 1-loss conference champion Alabama, who lost to that Texas team? Guys, they're going to put Texas in, and I don't think it's going to be all that difficult a decision. It wasn't like there were clear demonstrative changes on that Alabama roster. It's the same quarterback. It's largely the same players. He's definitely played better as the season's gone along, but this is not Sam Darnold's USC where you've got a clear line of demarcation, and so I think that would be a pretty easy decision for the committee to make, putting 1-loss Texas in over 1-loss Alabama if they're both there as 1-loss conference champs.
I disagree. I think if Alabama beats Georgia, and I think Alabama would get in before Texas would get in. I think the committee, while I absolutely go head-to-head, that absolutely is one of the ways I would look at it. That would now be the best win of any team, right? You have beaten according to the committee, you've beaten their number 1 team in Georgia. So I think if Alabama beats Georgia, Alabama gets in over Texas. If in fact it's only going to be one of those teams getting in. That's what I think.
Yeah, I just disagree, and especially if the Big 12 championship works out to where it's a Texas-Oklahoma rematch and Texas could potentially erase their 1 loss of the season. You've got extenuating factors that we can get to. We will do our college football weekend preview, and we will look at this game, the Louisville game that still hangs in the balance for the ACC championship and what their playoff hopes potentially look like. But it is Thanksgiving. We have got plates to get to here. In honor of the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings, we have decided to go ahead and rank our Thanksgiving dishes as we look ahead to the Big Turkey Day. So we went top 4. I even went on the outside looking in. Thanksgiving plate items heading into the big holiday here. We're going to put these up. Dad, you and I did this completely blind. We did this without consulting one another. And so looking up here, whose list do we have up here right now?
This is
that
GoJo's
me or Dad?
plate. GoJo's plate.
All right, this is my list here. And no surprise here, I went sweets at number 1. I just went and thought about this, Dad. What do I look forward to the most every year when I'm getting ready for Thanksgiving? And it's getting the opportunity to try and eat an entire pumpkin pie by myself.
Yep.
I understand it's dessert. Some people even call it kid food. I don't care. It tastes good. It's the best pie on the table during Thanksgiving. Pumpkin pie night, my number 1. Dressing, not stuffing, because dressing's prepared outside the bird. Stuffing goes in the bird. And usually when I've grown up, we've had it prepared outside the bird. And then ham, the premier Thanksgiving protein. Turkey is a legacy play. It's got to be there. It's important, but it's not the best protein that I can have on my plate. And then I love a good green bean casserole, man. A well-done GBC with the little crispies on top, the little onion crispies that you throw in there is a wonderful addition. I get it's one of those things that only really comes out on Thanksgiving. I get we can have a conversation about including better foods overall that aren't just one siphoned off to one portion of the year in Thanksgiving. But if we're going to rock with some of the foods that are time-honored traditions, I think green bean casserole deserves a place at the table. Shout out to mashed potatoes and sweet potato casserole, who would be just on the outside looking in for me at that 5 and 6 spot.
Well, you can. It obviously will show that we are father and son.
But wait,
because
what's
my
dressing? I'm still confused.
Dressing is stuffing that's prepared outside of the bird.
Yeah.
So stuffing, you know how when you're making the Thanksgiving turkey, people will put the stuffing in the bird and then take it out and serve it after. Dressing is just stuffing prepared outside the bird.
God, maybe I just have no idea.
Yeah, stuffing is just that. You stuff it in the bird and cook it with the bird, and then you pull it out. I'll take it either way. It doesn't make. I actually like it when it's cooked in the bird, in all honesty. But I love it either way. We have the exact same 4. I don't think anybody should be shocked at that. I just have the 2 at the top flipped. I have stuffing number 1. I have pumpkin pie number 2. I'm with you. I'd like to eat an entire pumpkin pie. Your mother even said we had to have a few people here. I know, Mike, you're going to be here. It's like, she's like, I think 1 pie is enough. I'm like, really? Really? You know, now all of a sudden Mike's going to be here. I think we have to go 2 pies. So I go stuffing, I go pumpkin pie, I go ham, and then I do green bean casserole as well. I mean, I'm right there with all. My right on the outside looking in, Mike, 7-layer salad. Big fan of the 7-layer salad.
I didn't know that was
and you know what? I understand mom makes that every year. I love mom's version of it. There's no doubt. But
it's
man,
so good.
It's almost too good for you. And I understand it's got a whole bunch of rich ingredients in it, but it's almost too good for you.
Yeah, I mean, onion, celery, bacon, lettuce, sour cream, peas, mayo, shredded cheese on the top.
Yeah, it's good.
It is phenomenal. Phenomenal. So that is right there on the outside looking in. I almost put it in above the green bean casserole. Love mixing them together. So big fan of that. Jesse, what do you got?
Okay, so I mean, this is my Thanksgiving plate. So there's stuff on here that is just not on anybody else's Thanksgiving plate because we eat different at Thanksgiving. So we're doing a pork shoulder this year. So we're going pork shoulder at 1 because that's just absolutely delicious. We're going mac and cheese at 2. My mom home makes a mac and cheese that is absolutely outrageous. And then we're going to go stone crab claws at 3. So we got some stone crab claws this year. And then gravy at 4 because I just feel like gravy is the GOAT. I put it on the stuffing. I put it on all of the stuff and it makes everything taste better.
Is gravy a dish or is gravy a condiment in this case?
I feel like on Thanksgiving, it feels like it's its own dish, to be quite honest. I get that you don't eat it by itself, you put it on other things, but it felt like it deserved a place in my rankings because I put it on pretty much everything on my plate.
You know what? I actually agree with Jesse in that it does deserve special recognition because we always talk about glue guys on a team. Gravy's the glue guy for the plate. It brings it all together. It's the tie that binds. I would say it's always working in tandem with its partner mashed potatoes in my plate, though.
Jesse, does the mac and cheese have a little bit of like breading on the top to make it kind of that's kind of crispy?
It gets baked, and then you broil it, so the top is very crispy. I'll take a picture of it and send it to you.
Oh. Okay. All right. I like
that.
How
long does it take to brine your turkey an ace of spades?
How long does it take to brine your turkey an ace of spades?
I mean, with how rich the rest of that plate sounds, it seems like the logical next step.
I mean, God.
I don't even know what he just
Good Lord. Bougie.
right, we have to address the elephant in the room because we just did our Thanksgiving plate rankings, and as soon as we go off air, our friend Jesse makes an admission to us behind the scenes in confidence that we are now going to completely betray because she says to us, I had one thing that I really wanted to put on there, but I didn't want to sound bad and I didn't want to sound too bougie in doing it. But one of my favorite parts of Thanksgiving every year is the Thanksgiving caviar. I have never heard of anybody going caviar on Thanksgiving until I met our friend Jesse.
I have never heard those two words put together, the Thanksgiving. Is that a special serving? Come get the Thanksgiving caviar before the meal.
No,
what the hell is that?
It's just caviar is really good. You know, you do the little bellinis with the creme fraiche and the caviar, and I was like, man, I can't put this on here. I'm going to sound like an a-hole. And then
I don't know any of the words you just said. I don't know any of the words you just said outside of caviar.
Yeah, okay, the little bellinis are the little potato pancakes that you put the creme fraiche. Never mind.
No clue.
I'm picturing Jesse eating Thanksgiving dinner like the Monopoly man with a little monocle and a top hat.
Oh, man. I can't wait to send you guys pictures of my Thanksgiving meal.
This shouldn't shock us. She's got stone crabs on there, which, by the way, I love, and they're coming up from Miami, so I don't know if they're Joe Stone crabs or not, but, I mean, I love Chris and I would ate when we were down in Miami last year. That was one of the good things down there outside of the football.
They'll ship them right to your house.
Oh, I know. Oh, believe me, I know. We've done that as well.
Yeah, okay,
but
thank
caviar,
you. Thank you.
Not on Thanksgiving, but that's okay. I'm not ripping your stone crabs on Thanksgiving. Eat what you want. Caviar? I've never had caviar in my life, and I have no want to have caviar.
I'm just saying,
but I guess
it's not specifically Thanksgiving. It's more just like special occasion related. So like my whole family's together, so we're doing it. But yes, I get. That's why I didn't include it in my rankings. God.
Wow.
You know what? I will say this is a good reminder to people. We should not kink shame outside foods at Thanksgiving.
Yes.
If you got baller food to make, put it in there. We have updated Jesse's plate, by the way, to now put caviar at its rightful place at number 1 in the Thanksgiving plate power rankings.
And now Ace of Spades is on there. You guys are trolling me now.
Blue oysters and gold actually checking in at 4.
Mike, I'm not going to ask Jesse because I know her answer to this. Mike, do you believe that on a random Wednesday in April, before her and her husband sit down to dinner, they have some caviar? Just on a random one? I think so.
No.
I think so.
It's a special occasion thing.
Uh-huh. Is it really?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
I can say, I just love that the closest I get to this is when I used to have Goldschlager with the gold flakes in it in college.
Yeah.
That's the closest I got to ingesting that level of class. But again, no one should be shamed for making good food at Thanksgiving, even if it's not traditional Thanksgiving food. If you got baller food on the table, then you're winning. Yep. So make sure you go and leave it all out there. Let's get to Jesse and save you from the rest of us making fun of you with our Thursday night TNF preview that's now going to be on Friday.
Yes, presented by Prime Video. So it is on. Now, of course, like GoJo said, a little different this week. First time the NFL has scheduled a game on Friday after Thanksgiving. So this is our Thursday night preview for a Friday afternoon game on Wednesday. Okay? So before we get to that, though, guys, weekly Aaron Rodgers update, because we just have to get this in there. He says he wants to be back on the practice field in 2 weeks, only 3 months removed from surgery on his Achilles. An insane situation. He keeps talking about how he's going to come back. He is now giving specific dates, okay? He's giving specific dates, but he has said that he has a little bit of guilt over how things went down with Zach Wilson.
This was obviously not the way any of us thought this was going to go down. It was going to be me and my show and Zach getting to learn and watch it firsthand and not have the pressure to go out there and play. And so obviously, this is disappointing. I have some, personal guilt around the whole thing. I mean, I'm pissed that I wasn't able to play and frustrated that, if I was out there and I feel like I'd be playing well, there would be obviously different narratives around our team, and Zach would, again, have the opportunity to learn and grow and see what it looks like.
So no Rodgers, no Wilson now. It is Boyle time, baby.
Yeah, fire up the boiler and get ready to go for this weekend. Dad, Aaron Rodgers said he's been running in the zero-grav treadmill that helps guys in the rehab process, wants to be back on the field. We've talked about it. It still seems like a real long shot right now, given the way their season's gone. I would be saying I feel bad for the rest of the guys on the team, too, which I'd hope was the implication there. Because while, yeah, it's been tough for Zach Wilson, I'd imagine it's even worse to be Garrett Wilson looking out here at one of the prime years of your career going down the drain.
Well, that's exactly right. This is a short career in the NFL for the most part, so it's a year-by-year situation. And where you think you had that potential year, and then it goes by the wayside, basically 4 games in, that can make it a daunting task. The situation now with Aaron Rodgers, I think, is getting to the point where the team is going to have to save Aaron from. I don't want to say save him from himself, because maybe he can come back and be fine. But I get it from Aaron's side. Just as anybody coming back from an injury, you want to give yourself a goal, whether it's when you get hurt in the season, if you know you're going to be out the rest of the season, I want to come back 100% the following season. You need that, because it's a lonely time when you're rehabbing injury. So you want to have that goal, that marker of I'm going to be back. And with guys like Aaron, some of these markers become very obviously very, very public. And so there's not only the goal thing, but then the pride thing of saying I could be there and I could do that. Where, in all honesty, this team is not a playoff team, not good enough to be in the playoffs. To me, I mean, the Jets are still his employer, and say, Aaron, we can't let you go back out on the field. We know this was your goal. We know you wanted to do it. We know this is basically what you said was going to happen. But, man, I just wouldn't risk it. Why would you? He got hurt in 4 plays. 4 plays. And to think there won't be another D lineman that's hitting him if he came back in for 1 series is ridiculous. He's going to have to move and run. And so to think that it couldn't happen again, or something along the lines of a little setback, why would you put yourself in that position? And they're going to have a battle on their hands, because Aaron has been very, very forthright in saying, I will be back, I'm going to be back, and he wants to prove that he could make it back. So there's going to be a little bit of, in my opinion, I think a little bit of headbutting, because to me, you don't just want to say, all right, Aaron, you made it all the way back, go ahead back out on that field. Man, would I be holding my breath and biting my fingernails about that one to see if he could survive it.
Yeah, they're plus 1,100 to make the playoffs right now. It's a total long shot, but it's got to be frustrating for him to look out at this offense every week and see what it could be. They have 9 touchdowns in 10 games. They're the first team since the 2009 Browns to fail to score 10 offensive touchdowns in their first 10 games. So at least average a touchdown per game, which seems like the lowest possible bar to clear for this team. All that being said, Dad, going up against this matchup, where the Dolphins are first in points per game, the Jets are 30th in points per game. Everything skews in favor of them. The Dolphins are 10-point favorites here. There's part of me that wonders if the Jets defense can keep it within the spread. Just because they do all the things that have bothered this Miami Dolphins offense. When we look at post-Denver, what's given them issues against good defensive fronts like the Bills and like the Eagles, the Jets have the guys and the depth up front to roll bodies against this banged-up Dolphins offensive line and at least gum up the wheels of this offense a bit to keep it a low slog, even if the Dolphins are still going to win.
They do, but a lot gets on your shoulders every game to have to do it game in, game out, game in, game out, series in, series out, to hold that consistency up. It's very difficult to do, and it can start to get away from you. And if it starts to get away from you, what happens is you go on that sideline, in all honesty, the defense has zero confidence in the offense if that opposing team pulls 10 points ahead, 12 points ahead, 14 points ahead, that we can't come back. Well, I know our offense can't bring us back. And, man, you then start to get that faraway look on the sidelines.
Man, I tell you what, though. One of the first times, I should say, Zach Wilson got benched, we had the rise of Mike White, who's now off the team. Maybe Boyle's got a little bit of magic on Thanksgiving. I hope so, for the sake of one man, and his name is Al Michaels.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We're ready to talk about the game. Ohio State and Michigan are set to play football for the 119th time on Saturday. No two teams have had more AP Top 5 meetings than Michigan and Ohio State. 12 times they've met as Top 5 teams since 1942. Michigan, a 6-point favorite in the game. Of course, the backdrop of this one, Jim Harbaugh still serving his suspension here. And the guys have the perfect guest to break this one down.
Yeah, very excited as we get to the biggest rivalry game of the weekend, the most stakes, the way it's been, honestly, the last few years for Ohio State and Michigan. Very excited to welcome in former Ohio State linebacker Joshua Perry, former Michigan tight end Jake Butt. You guys can catch them on Red Corner, Blue Corner over on Stadium. Breaking down everything, certainly Big Ten. But guys, for this week, walk me through the feelings, Jake, of this. You guys were there at the same time, too. So you guys have a lot of direct head-to-head remembrance of this rivalry as players. What's this big week been like around the show, Jake?
Well, first off, I don't know, no one can see me right now, but I've just been smiling since the moment I locked eyes with Joshua in the pre-show because I was hit with this sudden realization. Next week during our show, my life it'll be the best thing in the world. It'll be the best feeling in the world, or it will be a living hell, and there's really no in between. So that will be decided at about 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. We will know the final verdict. But other than that, I'm a pretty level-headed guy. I don't get too high, too low. Joshua will tell you it's been a slow climb, but today there's a fire inside me, man. It's time to turn the page. Joshua, I don't even know if I can call you my friend anymore. Now you are the official. You're on the other side, bro.
All right, let's calm that down, Jake. I feel like we can still be friends up until foot meets leather. Then after that, we got to make a decision.
Fair enough.
Can I need to ask a question just from the name of the show. Joshua, how did you get Red Corner first instead of blue? Was there an actual battle on the color corner first for this title?
Well, you know how these things typically go, right? Like you get the agents involved and you're talking to production about who gets top billing. And, of course, I've got the inside track within the building. So I said, listen, if this show is going to be a go, we got to make sure that the Buckeyes get the proper representation. I had the upper hand when Jake and I were both players in that rivalry game. So it makes sense that we would get the red corner before the blue corner.
Oof. All right, man. So it's getting personal very quickly here, which we love. I want to go back, Joshua, to you mentioned the upper hand when you guys were players. Walk us through what game week is like from the Ohio State side, getting ready for this one each and every year, what that messages from the coaches are like, and how you're going through preparing for this as a player back then.
Yeah, I mean, I played for a certified maniac and tyrant who I love in Urban Meyer. So he had a diabolical plan to have us ready to go in that game. So we would, we'd play on Saturday before, We'd go home. Then Sunday we would come in for our meetings, and he would have this LL Cool J song called "It's Time for War" playing, and that would like set the tone. We knew what it was when we walked in the facility. He would have scout team jerseys for Michigan taped to the floor so we could get used to walking all over Michigan. It was a whole thing, and he was very much like, let's all hunker down. This is just about us. We're not going to bring in guests to talk about this. No former players, no former coaches. This is about what our team is getting ready to do. And he would build up the opponent throughout the week. And then kind of toward the end of the week, he would knock them back down a little bit and give us that confidence going into game time. So I think he had a plan, knew exactly how he wanted to attack it. He was a maniac, but you need a maniac to be able to be successful in that rivalry.
Jake, same way with you. How was the prep for that week, and how much different was it than other weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting to go back because I did 2 years with Brady Hoke and 2 years with Coach Harbaugh, and the way Coach Harbaugh, who is still in the building, just not officially the head coach on game day, the way he's changed this week, it just gives you just an interesting look into the philosophy that you kind of just heard from JP there. But, you know, with Brady, we ended every single meeting. It wasn't just the week. It was year round. We'd have a team meeting every day, and we ended every meeting with him saying beat. And then the rest of the room would say Ohio, right? And, you know, that week, all the scout team took some gray silver and red tape and taped their helmet to look just like the Ohio State helmet, very similar to what they were doing in Columbus. And then when Coach Harbaugh got there, all that was done. We didn't do any of that. It was always just about us, and yet we still didn't get it done. But now what you've heard, and I do think there's some value. It's an interesting thought. I do think there's some value to Michigan implementing a beat Ohio drill a few years back, and now the emphasis has led to back-to-back victories over Ohio State.
Yeah, and I want to kind of stick there because looking at the modern version of this rivalry in the last few years, for so long it was Jim Harbaugh can't beat Ohio State, can't beat Ryan Day, can't get over the hump on this. Jake, in your mind, what changed with that? What do you think in this rivalry changed that's allowed Michigan to get over in the last couple years?
You know, the funny thing is like the year it changed was the year after the COVID year, which was like one of the lowest years in Michigan football history. I mean, I remember that offseason where people thought it was time to move on from Coach Harbaugh, who's a phenomenal coach. Be careful what you wish for. There's not many that can coach football like he can. And that offseason, Michigan was unranked. There was like metrics that say they had like a 0.1% chance to, you know, win the conference. And I think what that led to is Coach Harbaugh, he was trying harder and harder and harder and doing more and more and more to win. So eventually he just took a trust ball and said, like, you know, screw it all. Like, let's just trust in ourselves. He went younger with his staff. He made some moves in the leadership of the program. And it was the timing worked out perfectly where I still talk to guys this day, and they credit Aiden Hutchinson as the guy that has changed this program around in terms of his leadership. I think Ben Herbert is a sneaky big piece of this, the strength coach. I go listen to these guys talk about him, what he has done for the mindset of these players. And I really think this week there's X's and O's certainly, but there is like a mindset and a belief and an understanding and a love and cohesion that goes into the victory of this game. And Ben Herbert was a big piece of that. They did it in 2021. And then the question was, it wasn't all of a sudden everyone picked Michigan. Then it was split. Half the world said, okay, well, Ohio State will win at home. Half said Michigan won't get it done. And then Michigan did it again. And now what you have is you have the scales completely tipped to the other side where Michigan is the overwhelming favorite. They're the betting favorite in this game. And now everything that Michigan had to do to overcome that, now that's on Ryan Day and Ohio State to overcome the mindset piece of this.
So along those lines, Joshua, just what Jake said, and I remember on air talking about it a couple of years ago when Harbaugh was losing consecutive years to Ryan Day and Ohio State, I would be like, how long will the alumni take this? You know, not being in the Big Ten championship game, not being in the playoffs, and then it's completely flipped. So now I'll ask you, how long will the alumni take this out of Ryan Day losing to Michigan, not being in the Big Ten championship, not being in the playoffs, even though the rest of the season has been going pretty well?
It's the most interesting thing to me. Like, as somebody who loves that university and somebody who, when they, ask for a little bit of money, I send what I can. I'm not wealthy, but I like to support. I'm all in, right? I'm all in on this guy. Here's the reality of the situation is people will be like, oh man, he's lost back-to-back to Michigan and he's lost 6 games. 6 games since he's taken over at Ohio State. This man has lost 2 games in Big Ten play since he's taken over at Ohio State. He's made it to the college football playoff 3 times, and the one time he didn't go, he won a Rose Bowl. He has coached in a national championship game. Jim Harbaugh hasn't done that, but they stuck around with that guy for quite a while. And so what I'm trying to say here is I think Ohio State is still a nationally relevant program. The idea that they lost last year and still made it to the college football playoff with an opportunity to beat Georgia and potentially go to a national championship game, I think is proof of that. And next year, things are going to be different too. The way that the Big Ten is shifting divisions, they could get a rematch at some point if they don't get that game. And even if they don't, they're still going to be right there in a 12-team playoff. And I know as an Ohio State guy, my number one goal is to beat Michigan. I did it 4 times out of 4 times. I would like for all of the guys who come through that program to do it. But the other goal is to win a national championship. And that is something I did when I was in school as well. And I got to tell you, both of them feel pretty good, right? And both of them get guys paid. And so I think the idea is, for me, as long as Ohio State is a program that is nationally relevant and has an opportunity to compete for a championship, it's hard for me to say that you should get rid of the coach. The other part about it is I'm not exactly sure you're going to find a coach as quality as Ryan Day to replace him.
Hey, just to back that up, I mean, thank God the emotional fan doesn't have the final verdict on coaching decisions. I could tell you for sure if the fan base got what they wanted in that COVID year, Michigan would be – I am very, very confident saying Michigan would be worse off today than they are keeping Coach Harbaugh. And say what you want about Ryan Day, as JP just said, he's up there all time in career winning percentage to start his career. These things take time, man. These things take time. Though this is a big year for him because though we can support him, the pressure is also fair. He needs to find a way to get it done sooner than later.
No doubt.
There's no doubt. And you're absolutely right. I mean, outside of the Big Ten and outside of this rivalry, look at a team like Florida State this year, who probably, if their fans would have had their way a couple years ago, would have fired Mike Norvell, and you wouldn't be sitting at a point now where, albeit they're going to try and do it without their quarterback, but knocking on the door of the playoff. I want to get into the outside noise of this week as well. And Jake from Michigan, we've seen both sides. It's warring factions of Ohio versus the world, Michigan versus everybody this week. Jake, all the sign stealing scandal that's been going on around this, the fact that Jim Harbaugh is not going to be on the sideline. For the players in that locker room, we've seen, and the outside world has kind of looked a little side-eyed at some of the emotion coming out there, looking at what's gone on here and how these Michigan players have weaponized it into turning it versus them versus everybody else. How real is that inside this locker room, or is this one of those clever motivational tactics that just happen in sports?
Oh, no, it's very real. And this week, it's anything that's real this week is amplified times 100. So it's even more real this week. And I've been thinking about how it could play out and how it could, play a role in this game. And I think Michigan's looked, maybe you could argue, a little shaky, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. J.J. McCarthy these past 2 weeks, it's like, it hasn't looked as good as it did earlier in the year when Jim Harbaugh was on the sidelines. But Coach Harbaugh is still with the team up until he cannot coach on game day, which means Friday night when they're in the hotel together and they have their meeting. And as Joshua said, there's no need to bring in an outside speaker. It's just you guys. And I almost think it's I liken it to a psychedelic experience. You've never been more present. The silence is amplified as much as the words are amplified. And Coach Harbaugh is going to sit there on Friday night and deliver a speech that I imagine unites the troops in a way that I don't think we probably, if you're a Michigan fan, at least you'd hope. And if you're a player, this is the.
Uh-oh.
Man, he got so fired up that we actually lost his internet connection there. So this is already the team. Oh, we got Jake back there. Jake, you got so fired up you actually cut your own internet out.
That happens, right? But I think when Coach Harbaugh delivers this speech, just to put a bow on this, I think the goal would be to unite the team in a way that we have not seen this entire century, right? So they can go out there and just play beyond themselves that Saturday at noon.
So let's go on the field for a minute. And Jake, let me start with you because it's about, the best receiver in the game. Both Ohio State and Michigan are two of the top teams in the country against the pass, but we know the Ohio State passing attack with Marvin Harrison Jr. can be deadly. How do you, as a former player looking at this, how do you try and stop or slow down a Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Well, thankfully, you got one of the best corners in college football in Will Johnson. And what really benefits, Penn State's got a great secondary, but Kalen King's, he's a little bit shorter. Will Johnson's like 6'2" with long arms. Like if I was on Madden creating a corner, for this matchup, it'd probably be Will. He's rangy with long arms, and that's going to help him try to bat some balls down. But it's not just on one. If you have Will Johnson follow him around the whole game, Marvin's going to get his. So you need safety coverage over top. And what that means is your D-line has to win up front to prevent the run because you have to commit resources in the back end to stopping Marv. We've talked about this on our show, though, and I went back and watched the Penn State game. In the first half, I would say McCord looked Marvin's way or through Marvin's way about 80% of the time on his initial passes. It was unbelievable. He was inaccurate on about half of those. He was off on about half of those. Ryan Day did his part. Ryan Day did his part in scheming Marvin open and hiding him by formation and personnel. The key here is changing the picture post snap for Michigan's defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. What I mean by that is usually you expect all the defensive line to be the guys in the pass rush. Well, Michigan brings a lot of pressures. So what you can do off that is simulated pressure, where you bring pressure from the linebackers or the secondary, and then it gives the illusion to McCord that he's got a bunch of green grass to throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. But all of a sudden, he drops those defensive linemen into those zones. It messed with Drew Aller. A number of times in that Penn State game, Drew Aller is just chucking the ball up because he was so confused by the picture. That's what has to happen this week. And then within that, does McCord have the discipline to take the sack or throw it away, or is he going to try to force feed Marvin and Michigan's able to take advantage of that opportunity with an interception or a key turnover? I think there'll be a few of those instances in this game that could really decide big-time momentum.
So I think a lot of us, when we think of Ohio State and the offense, do think of that. But Joshua, I think so much of the conversation, especially when it's pertained to Ryan Day in public, has been about toughness, and we think that manifests in the lines of scrimmage on both sides. For this football team, it's what's defined a lot of this Michigan resurgence in the rivalry. So when you evaluate the lines of scrimmage, Ohio State's offensive line and defensive line, how do you think they stack up in terms of their ability to go out and swing the balance in this game?
Yeah, I think to the trenches point, it usually comes down to that. Ohio State, I thought their biggest weakness coming into this year was not going to be replacing C.J. Stroud. I thought it was going to be across the offensive line where you had three new guys that were going to be starting, and it has not been great for a lot of the year. It's been great at times, it's been good at times, and at times it's been bad, but it has not been up to the standard of what people are used to seeing. I think the two tackles in Simmons and Fryer have gotten much better throughout the year, and particularly in pass pro. I think that those guys have figured their way out a little bit. I think Simmons has even figured his way out in the run game. Where I have trouble is on the interior of the offensive line with Hinsman, the center. I think that he's a fish. I think he's a guy that if I was a defensive coordinator, I would be scheming up all of our blitz packages and all of our rush packages to be able to put him in a blender so I could get after Kyle McCord. And Michigan has guys on the interior of their defensive line that I think are aliens. They're as good as anybody you would see on the other sideline for Ohio State. They're as good as the guys you would see for Bama, Alabama, or Georgia. So they're going to have a little bit of a problem in there. Ohio State's defensive line, I think, is extremely talented. They're disruptive, and I talked about Michigan's interior. Ohio State's interior is maybe a different body type, but those guys can get after it. And I think that it could be a favorable matchup for Ohio State's edges from what we've seen from the Michigan offensive line the last 2 weeks in particular. Ohio State on the edges has not been a high sack count team, but they've been a high pressure team. And I think that Jack Sawyer has played his best football as of late. He's a 5-star guy. He's from Columbus, Ohio. Is this an opportunity for him to kind of become one of the names that people remember from the game? We'll see. And then JTT, we all know, he can have that breakout game at any point.
Joshua, give me just about 30 seconds here. if your worst nightmare comes true and Michigan beats Ohio State and Michigan wins a national championship, do you put an asterisk next to their team name because of the sign stealing?
That's a tough one for me. I think players got to go out and execute. I also do think that you can make a legit case that knowing where pressure is coming from or knowing exactly what coverage you're going to get, you can get into a perfect play. I'm not into that business. I've got my national title, so I'll go ahead and let them have it. But I know a lot of people don't feel the same way I do.
There we go. I would tend to agree on that one. It's been a lot of jokes about that. It's been a lot of outside noise here, but thankfully this weekend we get toe, meat, and leather, and we finally get to play this damn game that once again is one of the most important in all of college football. Even if you don't subscribe or aren't a fan of either team, you understand that this one means business when it comes to this season. Guys, check out Red Corner, Blue Corner with Joshua Perry and Jake Butt over on Stadium. Do a great job. Both of you guys been kicking ass covering college ball all season long. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you guys on the other side if you're both in one piece after this.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, man. You know what? It's
That's awesome.
Remarkably civil from two guys that quite literally butted heads for a long time.
Until next
here.
week.
It's always amazing.
Until next week when they're talking about the outcome of the game. One's not going to be as civil as the other.
I'm just saying, you and I never even actually butted heads. We're related, and I feel like we fight way more often than those guys. So it's an incredible testament to what you can do and the power of sports to bring people together. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the rest of the college football slate coming up this weekend, as there are plenty of games that can still tilt the balance of power in the college football playoff race.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. There are plenty of other games outside of the game on the slate this weekend. So let's break it down with our Modelo College Football Weekend Preview, brought to you by Modelo, the mark of a fighter. Fellas, take it away.
Yeah, we got some bangers coming up this weekend, Dad. There are a lot of rivalry games this weekend. It is rivalry weekend in college football. Now, for us at Notre Dame, a little bit less impactful. Usually Notre Dame alters the end of the season with either USC or Stanford because neither of those teams are ever going to make the trip out to South Bend in November. And conversely, it's nice to leave the snow to go to California for one of these games in the middle of November, too. So Notre Dame and Stanford will play. They'll be overwhelming favorites in that. It's a rivalry game because we have a trophy like a lot of the other games that Notre Dame plays, but hardly registers in the same way, I think, as a lot of the games coming up this weekend. And we've talked about the game with Joshua Perry and Jake Butt having playoff implications. Oregon State versus Oregon this weekend, Dad. Oregon State's got this 2-week run where they had a chance to influence the outcome of college football on the top end. They have now become a great win for Washington, who remains undefeated. And now playing in an in-state rivalry, Dad, has a chance to spoil Oregon season. Everybody talking about how great Oregon is, the best one-loss team in college football, played better than Washington for the majority of that game. But in one, a rivalry game in general, but two, a rivalry game where Oregon State is actually a competent team with really good parts. This is a dangerous one for the Ducks walking in, who are 13.5-point favorites.
Yeah, it is. It is. And another shame of, again, the conference realignments. As we found out, the Apple Cup, Washington State, is going to continue. This one is not. These two teams have played every year since 1945, and now with Oregon leaving for the Big Ten, this is not going to happen every year. So that is a shame there. But as far as on the field, man, I mean, two shaky games, right, for Washington and Oregon to get by, because this is one we usually see as, I've used the term, the Pac-12s themselves, and all of a sudden they're not in contention. Right now they have two teams in contention for the Final Four, and somehow they manage to have nobody by the end of the season. So each one's got to get by their respective opponent here. Oregon State runs the ball well. Oregon hasn't been great against the run this year. I expect there to be some attacking there. So I think that could be big for Oregon State. Not only that, but to control the ball, because Oregon has, I think, the second most explosive by yards offense in the country, behind just LSU, averaging over 500 yards a game. Best way to not get them over 500 yards a game is to, if you're Oregon State, is to run the ball and control the clock. So we'll see if they're able to do that.
Yeah, I think the Oregon rush defense is actually up to the task. On the year, they're one of two Pac-12 teams to hold to under 100 rush yards per game on average overall. They've just got such a depth of big bodies across the defensive front, Dad. I think that's the difference. I've said they've built themselves like Georgia, where Dan Lanning came from, in the fact that it's a bunch of outside linebacker bodies that they can roll through wave after wave. They've got great depth there. And on the other side, this Oregon offense, you've got Bucky Irving, who, like our boy Audric Estime, was a Doak Walker scrub. That was snubbed. That was ridiculous.
Just a joke.
And I can't believe Bucky Irving's one of my...
A joke.
For both of them.
Yeah.
For both of them.
Yes,
completely.
for both of them. Yes.
I think Oregon wins this one pretty handily. I think this has been a mature football team for the majority of this year. We've seen them thrive in games that were supposed to be the test games for them, sans Washington. But even in that game, played incredibly well. They can hurt you on every level, Dad. They've got an offensive line up front that's huge, that can move weight in front of guys like Bucky Irving. Troy Franklin and that wide receiver core have a lot of time under task with Bo Nix. And for Bo Nix, you're in the middle of the Heisman race right now. And ever since you've come over to Oregon, you've really been able to avoid the blow-up games that used to be such a part of his narrative.
And I go with Oregon as well. I think if this turns into a passing game, Oregon last year had 18 sacks. This year they have 31. And from Oregon's offensive side, Bo Nix, I think, has only been sacked 4 times, or right in that area, 4 or 5 times. So they've done a nice job protecting him, and he gets rid of the ball. So I'll go with Oregon. They hang on for this one and get to the Pac-12 title game.
Completely agree. Florida State versus Florida, fascinating for the college football playoff picture, Dad. Another in-state rivalry. Both teams limping into this game.
Yeah.
Florida getting ready to start Max Brown, his first career start in this game after their starting quarterback was hurt in the last game, Graham Mertz, the Wisconsin transfer. And Florida State on the other side, so devastating, the loss for Jordan Travis on the season. A year where they had been undefeated, in the driver's seat, controlling their destiny. And now, while they won't be punished just for their quarterback going down, Dad, for Tate Rodemaker and for this Florida State team, having to go out here and execute against a sub 500 SEC team that is your rival, you've got to send a message that, hey, we're going to be able to, with the rest of the talent on this roster, with the group that we've got, going to be able to steer the ship without our signal caller.
Yeah, a little more got added to their plate, without a doubt, in showing in what can they show and prove with a backup quarterback. I think they get a little bit of help there by Florida's quarterback, Mertz, being out as well to kind of even the playing field there from the quarterback position. I still think Florida State's too good for Florida. I think it sets up for that big game for Louisville, which they're going to need some help, but boy, could they find their way into this thing at the end, and they get the chance of doing that in the ACC championship game as long as they can take care of business. But I like Florida State in this one. They're still the better team.
I would agree. This is where I would look squarely at your offensive line in front. And Alex Atkins, their offensive line coach, who's also the offensive coordinator there, has got a stellar group. Maurice Smith, one of my favorite centers to watch in the country. Them and Trey Benson going up against a Florida defense that every time we've seen them go up against a rushing attack this season has been giving up yards in droves. I think this is a game where you got to lean heavy on that. Say, hey, listen, we understand we got some aliens in the wide receiver core, but with a new guy, let's simplify the formula. Let's make sure we beat them up on the ground where they know that they can get had, and then let's live to fight another day and figure out, all right, how are we going to go about attacking a Louisville team that is absolutely capable, if they're not at 100%, of beating Florida State in the ACC championship and making this a real bad time. And speaking of that Louisville team, Dad, 7-point favorites on the road against Kentucky. If they go 12-1, they're in a really interesting spot. If this team manages to win the ACC championship with the resume they've got, terrible loss to Pitt, inexcusably bad loss that they're rightly going to be penalized for, but you've got a win at home against Notre Dame. It's respected by the committee, and you would have a win over a Florida State team that, albeit they wouldn't have their starting quarterback for the season, would still be a ranked Florida State team if you face them there. I think Louisville gets this done. Kentucky's been underwhelming all year, Dad. I had high hopes for this team. Ray Davis, great running back coming over from Vanderbilt's gotten fewer and fewer touches as the season's gone along. I don't know if he's hurt or what, but there's something weird going on there. And then offensively, Devin Leary, the quarterback that transferred in from NC State, just hasn't been able to deliver in enough big moments. And against this Louisville defense that's going to play downhill, throw a lot at you, blitz and pressure heavy, I just can't count on him to be the difference maker in this game.
Yeah, and I've been surprised, too. Ray Davis averaging just 12 carries a game in the last couple of games as opposed to averaging 15 or more before that. They're starting to turn the ball over. They're losing the turnover battle as of late as well. Louisville's a top 20 team as far as yards against or per rush. So can they keep Ray Davis, even if he does get more carries, contained a little bit? Louisville here, again, they're the better team. We know, but they're rivalry games. We know it's the end of the season. We know anything can happen, but man, if Louisville can keep their eye on the prize here, as we mentioned, there are some teams that control their own destiny. We don't believe Louisville is one of them. All they can do is beat who's in front of them and try and get that ACC title by beating an undefeated Florida State game. Then they're going to have some dominoes fall their way to make it into the Final Four, but they can certainly have an incredible season even if they don't get there.
Yeah, I'd say this. You get to the ACC championship, Jeff Brom, I have a feeling, is going to have Coach of the Year all locked up in year one to come into his alma mater and already have them knocking on the door of an ACC championship. And who knows? We are just talking about all these games that are going to impact the potential landscape for who makes it into the playoff. And if you get yourself to the ACC title game and you manage to win the ACC title game, man, you're at least within range. If some weird stuff starts to happen and you're a one-loss team holding a conference championship trophy, which, again, conference titles, something that the committee is told to factor in here, then you give yourself a chance, and that's really all that any of us can ask for. Very exciting weekend. Very much looking forward to this one. Coming up next, let's move on to the NFL here, guys. We get to take a look not only at the Black Friday Thanksgiving game and our Thanksgiving game, but looking ahead to the Sunday slate as we get our Sunday dinner, a 4-course breakdown of the NFL weekend heading up here next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. So after our Thanksgiving and Black Friday helpings of football, we get 11 games on Sunday to end this weekend. We are truly blessed. Let's stick with our food theme here, okay, and do a Sunday dinner 4-course breakdown of the slate. I am setting the table for you to begin with your appetizers, gentlemen.
Appetizers, which again in the Cofield household would consist of caviar. So this has got to be a game
That's
that is
finger
rich in
food,
taste.
GoJo. You don't sit down at the table and eat that like a savage, okay?
Wow.
How uncouth of me. I am disgusted. I will try and recover and pour water on this hot burn. And get to the game that will be the appetizer. The one that I'm intrigued by, Dad, because I expect Kansas City to win against Las Vegas. But based on the way the Raiders played this past weekend, I am definitely intrigued. How does Kansas City respond back after a tough loss in comeback fashion for the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football? I still think ultimately that game boiled down to turnovers at the wrong spot. I think most of what's wrong with them is fixable, and I think Kansas City is still the better team, but this Las Vegas Raiders defense especially has proved to be a tough out. I just don't think the Vegas Raiders offense has any chance against what Steve Spagnuolo has been doing on defense.
Yeah, boy, he certainly brings the pressure, no doubt about that. My appetizer game that intrigues me is Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati starts their post Joe Burrow time as he's out for the year, and Jake Browning takes over. But really more on the other side. What happens now in Pittsburgh? They fire their offensive coordinator, Matt Canada. Mike Sullivan, who was the quarterback coach, will be calling plays. He's done it before at some other stops he's been at. So I'm very intrigued because I'm not going to go over the numbers again and keep sledgehammering this Pittsburgh offense, but they stink. And Kenny Pickett's numbers have been awful. So I'm somewhat intrigued on this one as to what it's going to look like game one after. Again, the system is not changing, but the plays that are put in, the order they're put in, how you're calling a game for Kenny Pickett is going to change. So that part is going to be very intriguing for me.
That game is also going to be on my plate, but in a very different spot that we'll get to in a little bit here. Dad, the main course, the game that you are definitely going to watch this weekend, I'm going with Buffalo versus Philly. I think this is a fascinating checkup from the neck up for the Buffalo Bills, coming off of a win against the Jets team that is one-sided, that only has one thing that they can offer. And so Buffalo, after firing Ken Dorsey, came in hyper-focused. Can you do it 2 weeks in a row against a markedly better outfit in the Philadelphia Eagles? That's my biggest question for this game. Can Josh Allen, against a Philadelphia secondary that has been the objectively weaker part of their defense with a lot more weapons than we saw the Kansas City Chiefs had, the drops that plagued them in that game outside of Travis Kelce not having as many options. I think for Buffalo, what Stephon Diggs can do against that secondary are going to go a long way in determining that.
Big game. That's my main course as well. Big game for Buffalo. They're 2 back from Miami, but they have a win over Miami, and then they play them at the end of the season. So can they be in a position to tie them up record-wise but sweep for the season? You mentioned the win against the Jets, but that's not very impressive, and they're coming off then back-to-back losses from Cincinnati and Denver. So we're really trying to find out who they are, right? And we know who Philadelphia is. It's not the prettiest thing in the world. Sometimes it looks pretty, sometimes it looks ugly. And we just hope every series gets down to a third or a fourth and 2 or 1 so we can see the brotherly shove. Because, again, they did it against Kansas City. And, again, Kansas City players are diving over the top. I just don't understand how people can still do that and just all you are is you're on a surfboard riding the wave. I don't get it. But I still wait for that play to be stopped. It hasn't, but that's definitely the main course to me to see which Buffalo team is going to show up.
And you know what's interesting? We really only saw that a couple times in that game because by and large, Kansas City did a really good job on first and second down of keeping them out of range of third and short, fourth and short plays. And so for Buffalo and for Sean McDermott, who we know this year has been a much more aggressive defensive play caller than you had with Leslie Frazier in years past, how are they going to attack those early downs? Because for Philadelphia offensively, Dan, I think there were a lot of people surprised and frustrated last week. The passing game was incredibly lateral. The offensive line, at times, Chris Jones gave them all that they can handle up front.
Oh, he did.
For Buffalo, Do you have anybody that's going to be able to match that kind of production individually? Can Von Miller finally come on and have a game as he's come back from injury? He still hasn't looked fully like himself. And so you're going to need either someone up front or extra bodies to try and add in on that, because if Philadelphia can just have their way and get back to rushing the ball with the consistency that we're used to there, could be a long day for Buffalo. Let's get to the side dish, Dad, the game that you're going to keep a close eye on. Jacksonville at Houston. Division game is all of a sudden the Houston Texans don't just look like some plucky first-year story with a rookie quarterback who's really good and a franchise with a head coach that we all like. This looks like a playoff team. And now in this division, they are closing the gap between them and Jacksonville, who's been on top of this for a while here. I have good, strong feelings about the Houston Texans and what they might be able to do in this game. Jacksonville rolling into this one probably feeling good, but we've seen all year struggle once they get past that opening drive on offense against a Houston team that we talked about. Good at pressuring the quarterback, young edge rushers making their impact so far.
Yeah, mine is going to be what your appetizer was. My side dish is going to be Chiefs and Raiders. Raiders come out with 2 wins after Antonio Pierce takes over and played a Miami team pretty strong, right? That Miami offense, this vaunted offense, that defense did hold them to just 20 points. They lost 20-13. It was a competitive game. So the Raider team is playing better. They're one of those teams that, while they're not going to make the playoffs, can be a detriment to a team that is going to make the playoffs, can sneak up and beat you because Antonio Pierce is going to have this team ready each week. So that's what makes this one a bit of a, I'm going to keep my eye on just to see if they can stay in this game. I expect Kansas City to win, but it would not shock me, again, with the new coach and how much they dig Antonio Pierce and how much better they're playing, to keep this one closer than we think.
All right. We're going to skip dessert here because we already talked about one of the games here. You mentioned Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh. That's the game I'm going to watch, but wish I didn't. And we're instead going to spice the table up a little bit. We talked about sometimes you got to introduce non-traditional Thanksgiving foods into there. And we're going to get to our spicy pick of the week, presented by Campbell's Chunky. We're going to predict the spiciest player heading into Sunday's slate of games this week. We are presented by Campbell's Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal. Head to DraftKings.com/Chunky to play this Sunday's free-to-play prediction pool for your shot at a bite of $5,000 in prizing. Dad, spiciest player for this weekend for me, and one I'm fascinated to watch. Last weekend, he was able to ride the wave with the support of his team and get through it. This weekend, give me a little Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, making another start, going against the Denver Broncos defense that's getting all this love right now. I love what they did with DTR, moving him around, using him as a designed runner in that game. Kevin Stefanski called a brilliant game plan with him at the helm last week. He's got the #1 defense in the league at his back. I like what DTR's got the chance to do against a Broncos defense that everybody's high on right now.
Amazing. That was one of the guys I was going to have, too, to see what he was going to do against this defense. So I will switch mine up, and I'll see if the spice can continue, because we know he's getting good sleep at night. We know he's being well-fed as well. But how about Tommy DeVito? Tommy DeVito, who has 5 touchdown passes in the last couple of games, going up against the Patriots, who are having an awful year, but usually have a very good defense. This is a direct game, but the Tommy DeVito story, this is what happens every year in pro sports, is we end up talking about certain players, Joshua Dobbs being another one, maybe DTR if he is, he starts to come along more. But Tommy DeVito, given his chance, nobody even knew who this guy was, right? Until a couple of weeks ago. Now he's setting giant records in the first couple of weeks he's doing starting while living at home with his parents. It's just something that you can't even write in Hollywood. So I'm going to go with Tommy to see if he can keep going on his string of touchdown passes against, as I said, a team that's bad this year in the Patriots, but usually can trot out a pretty good defense.
Thomas the Vito going off here. Very excited for that one. Those are pretty spicy picks there, too. So you guys, again, can head over to DraftKings.com/Chunky and play in this Sunday's free-to-play prediction pool for your shot at that bite of $5,000 in pricing there. You know what? The other one I was thinking about was Zay Flowers in that Baltimore receiving room going against the Chargers defense on the back end that is reeling right there. A lot of spice heading into this weekend. It's not just the Turkey Day slate. You got a spicy finish. Speaking of spicy finishes, we will get to the Stephen A. sound heard round the world in This, That, and the Third next. right, delirious heading towards the finish as we all get ready for a Thanksgiving nap. We are going to send you off into the holiday weekend. Again, we will not be live tomorrow or Friday. No new shows coming then. We'll be back with you live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Next week, here on the DraftKings Network, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, DraftKings YouTube, and more. You can check us out there. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating. And if you missed any of the show today with great guests like our friends Joshua Perry and Jake Butt, who you can check out at Red Corner, Blue Corner, over on Stadium, doing a great job, former Ohio State linebacker and Michigan tight end, respectively. You can check them out wherever you get your podcasts or right here on the DraftKings YouTube channel as soon as we get done. We will get to the most shocking thing that I heard yesterday from one Stephen A. Smith, a man who makes a living with the hottest takes on earth. Even surprised me with the versatility yesterday. But let's talk about the versatility of our friends at Wrangler. We're brought to you by Wrangler. Jeans, shirts, and jackets made for the ride of life. You can be ready for cooler days, longer nights, and styles that are going to keep you warm, comfortable, moving, and looking great no matter where you are. You can wear Wrangler jeans literally anywhere, at work, out at night, playing a pickup game with friends, or at home, watching the game on TV like I'm going to be the next couple of days. They are that comfortable and that durable. And there's a Wrangler shirt for every occasion, casual tees, snaps, button-ups, and layer them together. A little bit of both. Don't forget, of course, about the iconic Wrangler jackets. When the weather starts to chill out and you got to head outside, Wrangler will keep you ready for anything. Add some Wrangler to your getup with jeans, shirts, and jackets that look great, fit great, and move great, so you're always ready for whatever life throws at you. Save 15% with your first Wrangler.com order when you use promo code GOJO15. That's GOJO15. Wrangler for the ride of life. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third. And start off with, I think, a good bit of holiday warmth in this story here. Unfortunately for Shaq Leonard, the now former Indianapolis Colts linebacker, he got cut yesterday after the injuries that he suffered over the last couple of years. The level of play had just dipped to a point where the Colts decided to part ways with a guy that they gave a big contract to a while ago. It's going to be fascinating to watch as he gets through the waivers process here, who ends up taking a swing on a guy that could still be productive in the right setting. But that did not stop him from still, even after getting cut, going and handing out turkeys as part of a drive that he's usually a part of every year in Indianapolis. He got cut that Friday and said, I'm still all about giving back through the tough times, the good times, no matter what it is. Dad says a lot about the character of that guy to go out there and still show up for the people when it matters.
A lot about the character, and we all know there are so many things more important than the game of football. And, you just love the players that have the platform that take advantage of that to help others. And that's exactly what Shaq Leonard is doing. So kudos to him. He's been a fixture there since being a second-round pick in 2018, three-time All-Pro as well. He's been a tackling machine. And I agree, he can help with another team. We'll see. He's got the back issue. So where we are with the injuries, it's so wild. He said he was shocked he got released. He said, I asked for a November meeting. I guess I got a November meeting. I guess you have to be careful what you ask for, he said. I said, yeah, sometimes you do. But good on him for still understanding the bigger picture here and helping others.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder that these guys are members of their community, in some cases
right.
leaders in their community, and take that pretty seriously in their role. And it hasn't gone the way he's wanted to. You mentioned the couple of back surgeries. There's been nerve issues there, and trying to somehow focus on your diminished role on this team while also keeping sight of the bigger picture is a good reminder that there's some special guys that play in this league, and Shaq is certainly one of them. Jesse, let's get to that. An interesting moment in the world of higher education yesterday, courtesy of one Deion Sanders.
Yeah, so he was discussing, how he fell short of his own expectations for this season. And in the midst of all of this, he also got a little geography lesson.
Yeah. What's those little four heads that's in California? What do they call those? The people faces engraved? Yeah. Come on, man. I set up there. It's in where? South Dakota. I thought it was in LA all this time. Wow, my geography. That's the Hollywood thing? That's what I thought. I'm sorry. Thank you for educating me. Jesus, South Dakota.
You got it. First of all, Senior, you mentioned this when we were talking about this in the break. It's great that he can laugh at himself. Like, he's like, yeah, I effed that up, which was hysterical. It is also hysterical that he thought it was in L.A. Like, he thought that was in Los Angeles.
Listen, I love the fact he just laughed at himself because I'm telling you right now, pick 100 people off the street and ask them where Mount Rushmore is. How many do you think get it correct that it's in South Dakota?
Yeah, I said one
seriously.
of the Dakotas. I was like, I think it's in a Dakota. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be partially
also,
correct.
What an insane thing that exists to begin with. Like, thinking about the concept of South Dakota and trying to explain that to somebody, man, someone had a lot of free time on their hands.
Absolutely.
You're not kidding. You're not kidding. But like I said, and you kind of, as I heard that a couple of times, I thought he was thinking about the Hollywood sign. But still, to laugh at yourself and say, okay, my bad. In what's been an incredibly interesting season for one Deion Sanders, no doubt about that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what's wild to think about is we always talk about, for some people, Ice Cube is the guy from Ride Along. You live long enough to have something completely change meaning. I wonder if, as we've had, and like the guys at Pardon My Take have done so much in popularizing the idea of Mount Rushmore season, the debates that we always do, the Mount Rushmores in certain sports.
Yep.
I wonder if kids that were born after the year 2000 even understand what that's in reference to, or if they just think that that's a debate tool. Like, I wonder if they even know what Mount Rushmore is.
Probably not.
Well, that's a great call. They probably don't. You're right. And, should they know? Well, probably, but
we should probably be teaching that. But
we're not going to get into the.
I don't know. There's probably room for Mount Rushmore on TikTok somewhere. There'd be it feels like a really TikTokable feature in America. So we need to get somebody on that. We also need to get to the third and get to maybe the most important bit of cultural development in the last few days here. Jesse, Stephen A. Smith, a pioneer of takes, speaking of Mount Rushmore season, pioneered a take that I did not think he had in the arsenal yesterday.
Yeah, so he got a live caller in who asked him a question about the movie Cars, and then he proceeded to drop some serious Cars knowledge.
I would tell you he wouldn't be the GOAT. How are you going to be the GOAT? Because you talk about the movie Cars, right? You talk about the movie Cars, right? I mean, when you talk about Stripper King Weathers and Lightning McQueen, they're both tied with 7 Piston Cups. Strip Weathers, you've got about him? How can you be the GOAT? You got somebody that's tied with you? You got somebody that's tied with you? Sorry, that ain't gonna work. Well, I know you tried to catch me with that. You didn't think I knew that about that. You didn't think I knew about Cars, did you?
When you think about Lightning McQueen, it's not 7 Piston Cups. He's got 28 circuits. He got 28 circuits under his belt too.
Strip Weathers has 7 Piston Cups. I am not about to sit here and argue with a grown-ass man about the movie Cars.
Oh, come on now,
Strip Weathers has 7 Piston Cups.
Okay, so producer Slate's in our ears is very skeptical of this because he is like, how did they have Cars B-roll ready to roll during a live call about this supposedly random question?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot to wonder about, right? Because you're right, to have that B-roll immediately ready, that all of a sudden you have Cars B-roll in your arsenal. You know what, though? Stephen A. pulled it off. Okay, Stephen A. pulled it off. And by the way, he's right. You can't be tied in the number of Piston Cups you win. I don't care if it's animation or not, and be called the GOAT, right? You can have any argument you want, but in Piston Cups, you're tied as they are, Lightning McQueen and Strip Weathers, that you can't do it. So Stephen A. is right, and he pulled. Valid question you asked, Jesse, but Stephen A. is right about this one.
I've never seen the movie, so I don't know. I haven't but either. I guess he's right.
You know what?
Well,
I do love
you
this,
don't
though.
have
Are you going to say something?
No, go ahead, Mike. Sorry about that. I apologize.
I don't know what just happened. We are limping into the finale here. Stephen A. Smith has put us in a pretzel going into the break here. Just amazing, stunned. Everybody out there listening, have a great and happy Thanksgiving. We appreciate you guys all rocking with us here. Everybody who's been with us for the fall, we are thankful for all of you who have made the decision to not only tune in live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, but to download, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Leave it a 5-star rating. Check it out. Smash subscribe on the DraftKings YouTube channel. Throw us a bunch of likes. So eat, drink, and be merry. Have fun. Take care of each other. Enjoy the football, and we will talk to you on Monday.